pregnant with billionaire CEO's baby. He doesn't know she's the genius saving his empire. The pregnancy test trembled in Viola's hands as Logan's voice echoed through the construction trailer door. "The wedding's back on, Regina. Iris and I are announcing it Monday." Her breath caught after 3 months of secret meetings, stolen kisses, and whispered promises that he'd choose her. Logan was returning to his ex-fiancée. But he didn't know about the life growing inside her, or that she'd been hiding her true identity all along. Viola Palmer gripped the positive pregnancy test, her engineering mind calculating impossibilities while her heart fractured like overstressed concrete. Through the thin trailer walls of Blackwell Construction's main site office, Logan's voice carried with devastating clarity. His mother Regina's manipulative tone responded, weaving through the autumn air like a spider spinning her web. "Iris has been patient, darling. The merger with Montgomery Industries depends on this marriage. You know how important this is for the company's future." Viola's free hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach, where a tiny life was already changing everything. 3 months ago, she was just another face in the crowd at Sterling Engineering, hiding her true expertise behind a safe, invisible facade. Now she carried the child of Manhattan's most powerful construction mogul. A man who didn't know she was the brilliant structural engineer who'd been saving his projects from behind the scenes. The autumn wind rattled the trailer windows as Viola remembered how this all began. Her name wasn't even Viola Palmer. It was Viola Cross, and she held patents worth millions that had been stolen by her previous firm. After they destroyed her reputation and left her blacklisted from the industry, she'd learned that survival meant becoming invisible. But invisibility had its price, and now that price included watching the man she loved choose obligation over their growing family. Logan's voice continued through the thin walls, each word striking her like falling debris. "I understand the business implications, Mother, but things have changed. I can't just—" "You can and you will." Regina's voice cut sharp as steel. "This childish infatuation with some nobody employee needs to end. Iris brings connections, stability, and the social standing this family requires." Nobody employee. The words stung because they weren't entirely untrue. As far as everyone knew, Viola Palmer was just a project coordinator with a modest background and limited prospects. But Viola Cross had graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a doctorate in structural engineering. Viola Cross had developed revolutionary earthquake-resistant foundation systems. Viola Cross owned patents that construction giants would kill for. Yet here she sat, invisible once again, carrying the child of a man who was choosing a merger over their growing family. 3 months earlier, when this all began, Viola had walked into Blackwell Construction's headquarters carrying falsified credentials that listed her as a junior project coordinator. After watching her innovative designs get stolen and her career destroyed, she learned that hiding her brilliance was the only way to survive in a world that punished women who dared to outshine the men in charge. Her natural hair was pulled into a professional bun, her warm brown skin glowing despite the harsh, fluorescent lighting of the corporate office. She wore modest blazers that concealed her curves and spoke softly in meetings, letting others take credit for her solutions. But her dark eyes missed nothing, and her brilliant mind constantly calculated load-bearing capacities, stress points, and structural innovations that could revolutionize the industry. Logan Blackwell had built his empire from nothing after aging out of foster care at 18. His hands bore the calluses of someone who started swinging hammers and never forgot where he came from, even as he now commanded boardrooms in tailored suits. Standing 6 feet 2 inches with steel gray eyes that seemed to see through people's facades, he'd learned to read authenticity in a world full of users and social climbers. Their first meeting had crackled with unspoken tension. During a routine safety inspection of the Meridian Tower project, Viola quietly noticed a critical flaw in the foundation calculations that could cause catastrophic failure. While the lead engineer dismissed her concerns with condescending pats on the head, Logan watched her delicate fingers trace structural drawings with the confidence of someone who truly understood the mathematics of steel and concrete. There was something about the way she moved through the construction site, careful but unafraid, analytical but intuitive, that caught his attention. Most people in his world were either intimidated by the dangerous environment or dismissive of the workers who built their dreams. Viola was different. She spoke to the crew with genuine respect, noticed safety hazards others missed, and her questions revealed a depth of understanding that her job title didn't explain. The scaffolding incident happened during Viola's second week. She was reviewing blueprints on the 15th floor when a safety cable snapped. Logan's instincts kicked in like lightning striking steel. He lunged forward, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back from the edge just as loose metal beams crashed where she'd been standing. For 30 seconds, that felt like eternity. They stood frozen. Her back pressed against his chest, his arms still circling her protectively. She could feel his heartbeat through his work shirt, steady and strong, smell the combination of cedar cologne and honest sweat that made her professional composure crack like overstressed mortar. Logan's breath caught as he noticed how perfectly she fit against him, how her natural scent of vanilla and something uniquely made his mind forget everything except the woman in his arms. "You okay?" His voice was rougher than intended, intimate in a way that made her pulse accelerate. Viola turned in his arms, and suddenly they were face to face, inches apart. Her lips parted slightly, and Logan's gaze dropped to her mouth before snapping back to her eyes. The construction noise faded around them until there was only the sound of their synchronized breathing and the distant hum of machinery. "I'm fine," she whispered, but neither moved away. The moment stretched between them like a suspension cable under tension, beautiful and dangerous and holding everything together. The spell shattered when Riley Montgomery's voice cut through the air like a saw blade. "Logan, we need you in the trailer." Logan's business rival and former best friend approached with calculated timing, his smile predatory as he noticed their proximity. Riley had built his own construction empire by stealing other people's innovations and relationships, and his presence always meant trouble. Logan stepped back reluctantly, his hands trailing down Viola's arms before releasing her completely. The loss of his warmth left her feeling exposed to more than just the autumn wind. "We'll continue this later," he said, the promise in his voice making her pulse race like machinery under load. Their next encounter occurred during a heated project meeting where tensions ran as high as crane cables. The lead engineer proposed a solution for the building's wind resistance that Viola immediately recognized as inadequate. She watched Logan's frustrated expression as costs spiraled and timelines extended, his jaw tightening with each escalating number. Unable to stay silent while watching potential disaster unfold, Viola spoke up. "What if we adjusted the core structure using a modified tube-in-tube design? It would reduce materials by 15% while increasing stability." The room fell silent, like a construction site during shift change. Logan's steel-gray eyes locked onto hers with newfound intensity, and she felt the weight of his complete attention. "Explain." For the next 20 minutes, Viola transformed from invisible assistant to commanding presence. Her voice grew stronger as she sketched calculations on the whiteboard, her passion for structural innovation making her eyes light up and her movements more animated. She spoke about load distribution and wind resistance with the fluency of someone who dreamed in mathematical equations, who saw beauty in the precise balance of forces that kept skyscrapers standing. Logan found himself completely mesmerized, not just by her brilliance, but by watching her come alive when she stopped hiding her light. The quiet woman who usually sat in corners was gone, replaced by someone whose confidence filled the room like sunlight, breaking through storm clouds. "Where did you learn to calculate dynamic wind loads like that?" Logan asked after the meeting, cornering her by the elevator bank. Viola's confidence faltered as she remembered her carefully constructed facade. I studied engineering before transitioning to coordination work." Logan stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. The scent of his cologne mixed with the lingering aroma of fresh coffee from the meeting room. "You studied engineering, or you are an engineer?" The elevator arrived with a soft ding, providing Viola an escape from his penetrating gaze. But as the doors closed between them, Logan's expression told her he wasn't finished with this conversation. The questions in his eyes would demand answers she wasn't ready to give. Over the following weeks, Logan found excuses to work directly with Viola. Site visits became opportunities for private conversations. He began noticing everything: how she unconsciously solved complex problems while others struggled, how her laugh transformed her entire face, how she instinctively touched his arm when making a point about structural integrity or safety protocols. Viola fought her growing attraction to Logan, knowing their worlds were incompatible. She'd seen how Regina Blackwell treated employees she considered beneath her son's station. She knew about Iris, the socialite everyone expected Logan to marry, whose family connections would benefit his business empire. The society pages were full of speculation about their engagement, and Viola had no illusions about where she fit in that picture. But when Logan brought her coffee exactly how she liked it, 2 sugars, extra cream, without being asked, when he remembered she mentioned her brother Eddie's birthday and asked how the celebration went, when he stood a little too close during project reviews, and his voice dropped to an intimate register meant only for her ears, Viola felt her careful walls beginning to crack like concrete under extreme pressure. Have you ever felt invisible in a world where your talents went unrecognized, only to catch someone truly seeing you for the first time? That moment when professional respect becomes something deeper, something that makes your heart race, even when you know it's impossible. Tell me about that moment when someone saw your true worth. Was it in your career, your personal life, or somewhere unexpected? Share your story in the comments below, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you're already invested in Viola and Logan's journey. Because sometimes, the most powerful love stories begin when someone finally notices the extraordinary person who's been hiding in plain sight all along. The storm hit on a Thursday evening in late October, unexpected and fierce. Viola had stayed late to finish reviewing structural modifications for the Meridian Tower, while Logan returned to retrieve important contracts for the next morning's meeting with city planners. As thunder crashed and rain pounded against the trailer windows like bullets against steel, the power cut out, leaving them alone in the dark with nothing but emergency lighting and the sound of the storm growing more violent outside. Logan's voice cut through the darkness. "Looks like we're stuck here until this passes." In the dim emergency lighting, Viola could see his silhouette moving closer. "The roads will be flooded for hours," she responded, her pulse quickening as she realized they were completely alone with nowhere to go and no escape from the conversation they'd been avoiding. Lightning illuminated Logan's face as he sat across from her, his usual professional mask replaced by something more vulnerable. "Maybe it's time we had that conversation." "What conversation?" Viola asked, though they both knew exactly what he meant. "The one where you tell me who you really are," Logan said softly, "because the woman who just redesigned our foundation system in 20 minutes isn't a project coordinator. The woman who calculates load stress in her head while walking through a construction site isn't someone who studied engineering as a hobby." Another flash of lightning revealed Viola's face, and Logan saw something there that made his chest tighten, fear mixed with longing, walls built so high they seemed impossible to scale. "I can't," she whispered. "Why?" Logan moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the chilly trailer. "What are you afraid of?" The question hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. In the darkness, with only the storm for witness, Viola felt the careful control she'd maintained for months beginning to crumble. "I'm afraid of being seen," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the rain. "Because every time someone sees who I really am, they take everything from me." Logan's hand found hers in the darkness, his calloused fingers intertwining with her smooth ones. "I'm not them." "How do I know that?" The words came out broken, revealing wounds she'd kept hidden for so long. "How do I know you won't use what I tell you against me?" Logan lifted their joined hands, pressing her palm against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat strong and steady. "Because I know what it's like to have nothing. I know what it's like to be invisible. And I would never do to you what was done to me." The honesty in his voice, the warmth of his hand covering hers, the way he looked at her like she was precious beyond measure, it all combined to tear down defenses she'd spent years building. "My name isn't Viola Palmer," she whispered. It's Viola Cross. And I'm not just an engineer. I'm the engineer whose patents were stolen by Montgomery Industries. Riley Montgomery destroyed my career, stole my innovations, and made sure I could never work under my real name again. Logan's grip on her hand tightened, and she saw understanding dawn in his eyes. That's why you're here under false credentials. You're hiding from them. I'm hiding from everyone, Viola said, tears. She'd held back for months, finally falling. Because if they find me, if they discover what I've been working on, they'll take it all again. They'll destroy whatever new life I've managed to build. Logan released her hand and cupped her face instead, his thumbs brushing away her tears. Not while I'm here. I won't let anyone hurt you again. The promise in his voice, the tenderness in his touch, the way he looked at her like she was worth protecting. It broke down the last of her resistance. When Logan leaned closer, when his lips found hers in the darkness, Viola didn't pull away. Instead, she kissed him back with months of hidden feelings, with the desperate hope that maybe this time, someone would choose her over profit, her over convenience, love over obligation. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid this moment might shatter if they moved too quickly. But when Viola's arms wound around Logan's neck, when she pressed closer and whispered his name against his lips, the careful control they'd both maintained dissolved completely. Logan's hands tangled in her hair as he deepened the kiss, tasting the sweetness of her mouth and the salt of her tears. Viola had never been kissed like this, like she was precious, like she was chosen, like she was everything someone had been waiting for. His lips moved against hers with reverent intensity, and she felt something inside her chest crack open and bloom like flowers after rain. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Logan rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the moment you corrected our foundation calculations. That was 3 weeks ago, Viola said with a shaky laugh. 3 weeks too long, Logan replied, his voice rough with emotion. They sat there in the emergency lighting, holding each other while the storm raged outside, and Viola realized that for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. In Logan's arms, she felt seen, valued, protected. She felt like the woman she'd always dreamed of being, brilliant, beloved, and brave enough to trust someone with her heart. When this storm passes, Logan said quietly, I want you to meet my team as Viola Cross. I want you to work on our projects under your real name, with your real credentials. Logan, that's too dangerous. If Riley finds out, let me worry about Riley, Logan interrupted, his voice turning hard as steel. You've hidden long enough. It's time the world saw who you really are. As if summoned by their conversation, Viola's phone buzzed with a text from her brother Eddie. Storm's getting worse. You okay, V? She showed Logan the message. That's my brother. He works construction too. That's how I learned so much about the field before I went to school. He's been protecting me my whole life. Tell him you're safe, Logan said, then added with a smile that made her pulse race all over again. Tell him you're with someone who's going to keep protecting you. As Viola typed her response, she felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time since she'd lost everything, she felt hope. Not just for her career, but for something more. For love, for partnership, for a future where she didn't have to choose between her identity and her safety. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the trailer, wrapped in Logan's arms with their future spreading out before them like blueprints for something beautiful, Viola Cross finally stopped being invisible. Chapter 2. 2 weeks later, Logan's plans to reveal Viola's true identity were put to the test when their biggest project faced catastrophic failure. The Meridian Tower's foundation showed stress fractures that could bring down the entire structure, and the lead engineer's proposed solutions would cost millions while delaying completion by 6 months. Logan stood in the emergency meeting room, watching his board members panic while Riley Montgomery sat at the far end of the table with a satisfied smirk. This was exactly the kind of crisis Riley had been waiting for. An opportunity to swoop in and save the day while positioning himself to acquire Blackwell Construction at a bargain price. Gentlemen, Riley announced, standing with theatrical timing, Montgomery Industries has a solution. We can provide emergency structural consulting and complete the repairs within budget and on schedule. The catch, of course, was that Riley's help would come with strings, partnerships that would essentially hand him control of Logan's company. Logan's jaw tightened as he watched his life's work being offered up on a silver platter to the man who'd already stolen so much from the woman he loved. That's when Viola appeared in the doorway. She'd traded her usual modest blazer for a sharp black suit that emphasized her confidence, her natural hair styled in elegant curls that framed her face. But it was the way she carried herself, shoulders back, chin high, every inch the brilliant engineer she truly was, that made the room fall silent. "Actually," Viola said, her voice clear and commanding, "I have a better solution." Logan's heart raced as he realized what she was doing. She was stepping out of the shadows, revealing herself as Viola Cross, the engineer whose innovations had revolutionized earthquake-resistant construction. It was the bravest thing he'd ever seen anyone do. For the next hour, Viola transformed the crisis into an opportunity. Her solution didn't just fix the foundation problems. It created a new standard for high-rise construction that would save the industry millions in future projects. She spoke with the authority of someone who understood that her intelligence was a gift, not something to hide. Riley's face grew darker with each brilliant innovation Viola presented. Logan watched his former friend realize that not only was his takeover attempt failing, but the woman presenting the solution was the same Viola Cross whose patents he'd stolen years ago. "This is impossible," Riley interrupted, his voice sharp with desperation. "Where did you find someone with this level of expertise?" Logan stood slowly, his steel-gray eyes locked on Riley's face. "Meet Viola Cross, our new chief structural engineer. I believe you two have some history to discuss." The satisfaction Logan felt watching Riley's smug expression crumble was nothing compared to the pride that filled his chest as he watched Viola command the room. This was the woman he'd fallen in love with, brilliant, fearless, and finally ready to let the world see her light. After the meeting, as the board members filed out chattering excitedly about their new prospects, Logan found Viola standing by the window overlooking the construction site. The afternoon sun caught the gold flecks in her dark eyes, and she looked more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. "How does it feel?" he asked, moving to stand behind her. "Terrifying," she admitted with a laugh. "And wonderful, like I can breathe again." Logan's arms circled her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "I'm proud of you. What you did in there, taking back your power, showing them who you really are, that took incredible courage." Viola turned in his arms, and the look she gave him made his pulse accelerate like machinery under full power. "I couldn't have done it without you. You made me believe I was worth the risk." The space between them charged with electricity as Logan's hands framed her face. "You're worth everything to me." When he kissed her this time, there was nothing tentative about it. This was the kiss of a man claiming his woman, of someone who'd watched her conquer her fears and wanted to celebrate her victory. Viola kissed him back with matching intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. "Come home with me tonight," Logan whispered against her lips. "Logan?" Viola's voice carried uncertainty even as her body pressed closer to his. "I want to show you how extraordinary you are," he continued, his forehead resting against hers. "I want to worship every inch of the brilliant, brave woman who just revolutionized an entire industry." The word worship sent heat racing through Viola's veins. She'd never had a man look at her the way Logan did, like she was precious beyond measure, like touching her was a privilege he'd earned through devotion rather than expectation. "Yes," she whispered, the word barely audible but carrying the weight of complete surrender. Logan's penthouse overlooked the Manhattan skyline, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern elegance. But Viola barely noticed the view. Her attention was completely captured by the man leading her inside, his hand warm and steady in hers. "Are you sure?" Logan asked one more time, his voice gentle despite the desire burning in his steel-gray eyes. Instead of answering with words, Viola reached up and began loosening his tie. Her fingers worked the silk with deliberate slowness, her eyes never leaving his. "I've never been more sure of anything," Logan's breath caught as her hands moved to the buttons of his shirt, when her fingertips brushed against his chest, when she leaned forward to press a soft kiss where his heart beat strong and steady. He felt his careful control begin to unravel. "Viola," he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. She looked up at him then, and Logan saw his own desire reflected in her dark eyes. "Show me how it feels to be cherished," she said softly. Those words broke the last of Logan's restraint. His hands tangled in her hair as he kissed her with reverent hunger, tasting the sweetness of her mouth and the promise of complete surrender. Viola melted against him, her soft curves fitting perfectly against his hard planes. Logan's hands traced the elegant line of her spine through her suit jacket, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her throat, his lips finding the sensitive spot where her pulse fluttered like a caged bird. Viola's breath caught as Logan's mouth worked its way down her neck, each kiss sending waves of sensation through her body. When his hands found the zipper of her jacket, when the fabric whispered to the floor, leaving her in nothing but silk and lace, she felt beautiful for the first time in her life. "Perfect," Logan breathed, his eyes drinking in every curve, every graceful line. "You're absolutely perfect." Time seemed to slow as they discovered each other with reverent touches and whispered endearments. Logan's hands learned the silk of her skin, the way she sighed when he kissed the hollow of her throat, the way her back arched when his fingers traced patterns of desire across her ribs. Viola had never experienced anything like the tender worship Logan offered. His touch was gentle but sure, patient but passionate, making her feel precious beyond measure. When he lifted her in his arms and carried her to his bedroom, when he laid her down on sheets that smelled like cedar and rain, she felt like a queen being honored by her devoted king. The bedroom was bathed in soft candlelight that Logan lit with shaking hands, creating an atmosphere of romantic intimacy that made Viola's heart swell with emotion. This wasn't just physical desire, this was love expressed through touch, devotion made manifest in gentle caresses and passionate kisses. "I love you," Logan whispered against her skin as his lips traced a path of fire across her collarbone. "I love your brilliant mind, your generous heart, your incredible courage." "I love you too," Viola breathed, her hands exploring the muscled planes of his chest, marveling at the strength that had protected her, the tenderness that made her feel safe enough to be completely vulnerable. When they finally came together, it was with a sense of homecoming that brought tears to Viola's eyes. Logan moved with exquisite care, whispering words of love and encouragement, making sure she felt cherished in every moment. Viola had never known that physical intimacy could be so emotional, so transformative. "Look at me," Logan commanded softly, his voice rough with emotion. When Viola's eyes met his, when he saw the trust and love shining there, he felt something inside his chest crack open and bloom. "I see you, all of you. And you're magnificent." In that moment, as they moved together in perfect rhythm, Viola understood what it meant to be truly seen. Logan didn't just desire her body, he cherished her mind, honored her strength, and loved every part of who she was. The walls she'd built around her heart crumbled completely, leaving her open and vulnerable and utterly his. Afterward, they lay entwined in the candlelight, Viola's head on Logan's chest while his fingers traced lazy patterns on her skin. The Manhattan skyline glittered outside their window, but neither noticed anything beyond the perfect bubble of intimacy they'd created. "What happens now?" Viola asked softly, her fingertips drawing circles over Logan's heart. "Now we build something beautiful together," Logan replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "A life, a future, a love that's worth fighting for." Viola smiled against his chest, feeling more content than she'd ever thought possible. For the first time in years, she had hope, not just for her career, but for a future filled with love, partnership, and the courage to be her authentic self. But their perfect moment was interrupted by the sharp ring of Logan's phone. He reached for it reluctantly, frowning when he saw his mother's name on the screen. "Logan, we need to talk." Regina's voice was sharp with urgency even through the speaker. "Tomorrow morning, my office, 9 sharp." "Mother, it's late. Can't this wait?" "It's about your little friend," Regina interrupted, her tone making it clear she knew exactly where Logan was and who he was with. It seems Miss Palmer, or should I say Miss Cross, has some very interesting secrets, secrets that could destroy everything you've built." The line went dead, leaving Logan and Viola staring at each other in the candlelight. The perfect bubble of their intimacy had been shattered, replaced by the cold reality of the war they were about to face. "She knows," Viola whispered, her face pale in the flickering light. Logan pulled her closer, his arms tightening protectively around her. "Let her know. We have nothing to hide anymore." But even as he spoke the words, Logan felt a chill of foreboding. His mother had been playing political games since before he was born, and she'd never shown mercy to anyone who threatened her vision of the family's future. If Regina had discovered Viola's true identity, she wouldn't hesitate to use that information as a weapon. The next morning, Logan sat across from his mother in her opulent office, Viola beside him with her shoulders squared and her chin raised in defiance, Regina's cold blue eyes. Assessed them both like a general planning a battle strategy. "So," Regina began without preamble, "you're sleeping with the woman who nearly destroyed Montgomery Industries. How deliciously ironic." "Viola didn't destroy anything," Logan said firmly. "Riley Montgomery stole her patents and tried to ruin her career. She's the victim here." Regina's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Victim? Darling, she's a criminal. Did you know she's working under false credentials, that she lied on her employment application, that hiring her could expose us to lawsuits that would bankrupt the company?" Viola felt her carefully rebuilt confidence begin to crack under Regina's assault. The older woman spoke with the authority of someone who'd spent decades destroying people who threatened her family's position. "I can provide documentation," Viola said quietly. "Character references, proof of my qualifications." "From whom?" Regina interrupted. "Everyone you worked with has either been bought by Montgomery Industries or destroyed by them. You have no allies, no proof, no credibility. You're a liability this family cannot afford." Logan's jaw tightened as he watched his mother systematically tear down the woman he loved. Enough. Viola's credentials speak for themselves. What she accomplished in yesterday's meeting was impressive, I'll grant you, Regina conceded. But it doesn't change the fact that she's been lying to us for months. What else is she hiding? How do we know she's not still working for Montgomery Industries? How do we know this entire relationship isn't an elaborate setup to steal our trade secrets? The accusation hit Viola like a physical blow. After everything she'd suffered at Riley's hands, to be accused of working with him was devastating beyond measure. "That's not true," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Prove it," Regina challenged. "Show me one person who can vouch for your character, one person who can confirm your story, one piece of evidence that you're not exactly what Riley Montgomery claims you are. A corporate spy with a convenient sob story." Logan watched Viola's face crumble as Regina's words found their target. He saw the doubt creeping in, the old fears reasserting themselves, the walls beginning to rebuild around her heart. "Don't listen to her," Logan said urgently, taking Viola's hands in his. "She's trying to manipulate you. What we have is real." "Is it?" Viola asked, her voice breaking. "How do you know I'm not exactly what she says I am? How do you know this isn't all a lie?" "Because I know your heart," Logan replied fiercely. "I know your integrity. I know the woman who stayed late to double-check safety calculations, who risked her career to save our project, who's been hiding from the world because she was too honest to survive in it." But Regina wasn't finished. "If you truly care about my son, Miss Cross, you'll walk away now, before your past destroys everything he's worked for, before your presence ruins his engagement to Iris and costs us the Montgomery merger." "What engagement?" Viola asked, her blood running cold. Regina smiled like a predator sensing weakness. "The one Logan agreed to last night, after our phone call. Didn't he tell you? The wedding is back on. The announcement goes out this afternoon." Viola turned to Logan, searching his face for denial, for some sign that his mother was lying. But the guilt she saw there, the way he couldn't quite meet her eyes, told her everything she needed to know. "Logan," she whispered. "It's not what it sounds like," Logan said desperately. "Mother cornered me, threatened to destroy your reputation if I didn't—" But Viola was already standing, already backing toward the door. "You chose her, again. No, I chose you. Logan stood as well, reaching for her. I'm trying to protect you. By agreeing to marry someone else? Viola's voice broke completely. By letting your mother threaten me while you make deals behind my back? Miss Cross, Regina interjected smoothly, surely you understand that love alone isn't enough to build a marriage. Logan needs a partner who can match his social standing, who can bring connections and stability to the family business. You're a lovely distraction, but you're not wife material. The words hit Viola like sledgehammers, each one designed to shatter her confidence and send her running. And they worked. All the old fears came flooding back, the certainty that she wasn't good enough, that she'd been foolish to believe someone like Logan could choose someone like her over obligation and profit. You're right, Viola said quietly, her voice empty of emotion. I don't belong in your world. Viola, please, Logan started, but she was already walking away. Congratulations on your engagement, she said without turning around. I hope you'll be very happy together. The door closed behind her with quiet finality, leaving Logan alone with his mother and the ashes of his happiness. You've made the right choice, Regina said with satisfaction. Iris will be a perfect wife for you. Logan turned to his mother with fury burning in his steel-gray eyes. I haven't made any choice, and if you ever threaten the woman I love again, mother or not, you'll learn exactly how much like you I can be. For the first time in years, Regina Blackwell looked uncertain, but by then it was too late. Viola was gone, and Logan had no idea how to get her back. Chapter 3. 3 weeks passed like a fog of misery. Viola threw herself into her work with the desperate energy of someone trying to outrun heartbreak, but every blueprint reminded her of Logan's hands tracing structural drawings. Every construction site echoed with memories of his voice. She'd moved in temporarily with her brother Eddie, a gentle giant of a man who worked demolition but had the soul of a poet. Eddie had been her protector since their father, Marcus, abandoned them when Viola was 12, and he read her moods like engineering specifications. You look like death warmed over, Eddie observed on a Thursday morning, setting a cup of coffee beside Viola's laptop where she'd been working since dawn. When's the last time you slept? Sleep is overrated, Viola muttered, not looking up from her calculations for a new earthquake-resistant foundation system. Work was the only thing that kept her from falling apart completely. V, you can't keep going like this. That fancy boy really did a number on you, didn't he? Viola's hands stilled on the keyboard. She hadn't told Eddie the whole truth about why she'd left Blackwell Construction so suddenly, just that things with Logan had ended badly. But her brother knew her well enough to fill in the blanks. It doesn't matter, she said quietly. It was stupid to think someone like him could choose someone like me. Eddie's coffee mug hit the table with more force than necessary. Someone like you? V, you're the smartest person I know. You've got patents worth millions. You can design buildings that could survive anything, and you've got a heart big enough to forgive people who don't deserve it. Any man would be lucky to have you. Not lucky enough, apparently, Viola replied, her voice hollow. That's when the nausea hit. Viola barely made it to Eddie's bathroom before her stomach rebelled completely, leaving her kneeling on the cold tile floor with her head spinning. Eddie appeared in the doorway with concern etched across his weathered face. V, you okay? But Viola's mind was already calculating, her engineering precision applied to her own body signals. The exhaustion, the nausea, the way certain smells made her stomach revolt. She'd been so focused on heartbreak that she'd missed the obvious signs. Eddie, she whispered, her voice shaking, I need you to go to the pharmacy. An hour later, Viola stared at the positive pregnancy test with a mixture of terror and wonder. She was carrying Logan's child, a tiny life created from their one perfect night together, growing inside her even as their relationship crumbled to dust. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent her entire adult life hiding her true identity, and now she carried the ultimate secret, the heir to the Blackwell fortune, conceived in love, but destined to be born into a world where she'd been deemed unworthy. Meanwhile, Logan's life had become a carefully orchestrated nightmare. His engagement to Iris had been announced in all the society pages, complete with photos of them at charity galas and family dinners. But anyone who looked closely could see that Logan's smiles never reached his eyes, that he went through the motions of happiness like an actor playing a role he despised. The wedding preparations consumed Regina's every waking moment, but Logan felt like he was planning his own funeral. Every discussion of flowers and venues reminded him of what he'd lost. Every mention of Iris's wedding dress made him think of how beautiful Viola had looked in his arms. The breaking point came during a family dinner when Regina announced the final guest list. 500 of Manhattan's most influential families, she said with satisfaction. This will be the wedding of the century. Logan pushed his untouched food around his plate, his appetite gone along with his will to participate in this charade. Wonderful. Don't sound so enthusiastic, Iris said dryly. She was a beautiful woman in her early 30s, intelligent and well-educated, but there was no spark between them. No chemistry, no passion, no love. They both knew this marriage was a business transaction disguised as romance. I'm sorry, Logan said automatically. I'm just tired. Iris studied his face with shrewd eyes. You're thinking about her again. The statement hung in the air like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to acknowledge. Regina's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down with forced calm. I thought we agreed the topic was closed, Regina said sharply. Did we? Iris asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. Because Logan looks like a man in love with someone else, and I'm not interested in marrying someone who wishes I was another woman. Logan looked up, startled by Iris's directness. He'd expected her to be as invested in this arrangement as his mother, but there was understanding in her eyes that caught him off guard. Iris, Logan began, but she held up a hand to stop him. I've known you since we were children, Logan. I've never seen you look at me the way you looked at that woman at the charity gala last month. When she walked into the room, your entire face changed. You lit up like someone had switched on a light inside you. Regina's face darkened with fury. This is ridiculous. Logan made a commitment you manipulated him into, Iris interrupted, surprising everyone at the table. Regina, I respect you, but I won't be part of forcing a man to marry me when his heart belongs to someone else. Logan stared at Iris with newfound respect. You're calling off the engagement? I'm giving you permission to call it off, Iris corrected with a small smile. Go get her, Logan. Life's too short to marry for anything less than love. But when Logan tried to find Viola, she'd vanished as completely as if she'd never existed. Her apartment was empty, her forwarding address unknown, her phone disconnected. It was like she'd returned to being invisible, only this time she was hiding from him. Desperate, Logan turned to the one person who might know where she'd gone. Eddie Palmer worked for a competing construction company, and it took Logan 3 days of searching job sites before he tracked down Viola's brother. Eddie was everything Logan had expected, and nothing like he'd prepared for. 6 feet 4 inches of solid muscle with arms like tree trunks. But when he looked at Logan, there was intelligence in his eyes and protective fury that could level buildings. You got some nerve coming here, Eddie said without preamble, not stopping his work dismantling steel beams. I need to find Viola, Logan said simply. I need to tell her the truth. Eddie's laugh was harsh as grinding metal. The truth? The truth is you broke my sister's heart. The truth is she came home looking like someone had died, and she won't tell me what you did to her. The truth is she's been crying herself to sleep for 3 weeks. Each word hit Logan like a physical blow. I never meant to hurt her. I was trying to protect her. By agreeing to marry someone else? Eddie's voice rose with anger. By letting your mother call her a liar and a spy? By making her feel like she wasn't good enough for your fancy family? Logan felt something crack inside his chest. She told you about that? She didn't have to. I know my sister. I know what it looks like when someone makes her feel invisible again. Eddie finally stopped working and turned to face Logan fully. You want to know where she is? She's gone. Left town yesterday. Wouldn't tell me where she was going, just that she needed to start over somewhere new. The words hit Logan like a demolition ball to the chest. She's really gone? Gone and not coming back, Eddie confirmed. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe she's better off without someone who makes promises he can't keep. But Eddie's expression softened slightly as he saw the genuine devastation on Logan's face. This wasn't a rich boy who'd gotten bored with his toy. This was a man whose world had just ended. You really love her, Eddie said, and it wasn't a question. More than anything, Logan replied, his voice breaking. She's everything to me. My brilliant, brave, beautiful Viola. and I destroyed it all because I was a coward." Eddie studied Logan's face for a long moment, weighing something in his mind. Finally, he sighed heavily. "She didn't leave town." Logan's head snapped up. "What?" "She's staying with me, has been since she left your company, but she made me promise not to tell anyone where she was." Eddie's expression turned warning. "If I take you to her and you hurt her again, I'll break every bone in your body. Understood?" "Understood," Logan said without hesitation. An hour later, Logan stood outside Eddie's modest apartment building with his heart hammering against his ribs. Eddie had called ahead to make sure Viola was home, but he hadn't told her who was coming to see her. "Third floor, apartment 3B, Eddie said gruffly. "And remember what I said about breaking bones." Logan climbed the stairs like a man walking to his execution or his salvation. He wasn't sure which. When he reached the door, he could hear movement inside, the soft sound of someone working at a computer. His hand shook as he raised it to knock. "Eddie, did you forget your keys again?" Viola's voice called through the door, and Logan's chest tightened at the sound. She sounded tired, worn down, nothing like the confident woman who'd commanded that boardroom 3 weeks ago. "It's not Eddie," Logan said quietly. The movement inside the apartment stopped completely. For a moment, Logan wondered if she was going to open the door at all. Then he heard the chain slide, the deadbolt turn, and suddenly Viola was standing in front of him. She looked thinner than he remembered, her face drawn with exhaustion and something that might have been grief. But she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, still the brilliant engineer who'd stolen his heart and changed his world. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I need to tell you something," Logan said. "May I come in?" Viola hesitated, then stepped aside to let him enter. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with Eddie's furniture and Viola's architectural books. Her laptop sat open on the dining table, covered with structural drawings that made Logan's heart ache with recognition. "How did you find me?" Viola asked, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. "Eddie, after I convinced him I wasn't here to hurt you again." Logan turned to face her fully. "Viola, I need you to know. The engagement is off. I called it off the day after you left." Viola's carefully neutral expression cracked slightly. "What?" "I never wanted to marry Iris. I was trying to protect you from my mother's threats, but I did it all wrong. I should have fought for you instead of trying to fight for you in secret." Logan stepped closer, his eyes searching her face. "I choose you, Viola. I've always chosen you. I just didn't have the courage to do it publicly until it was too late." Tears gathered in Viola's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "It doesn't matter now." "It's the only thing that matters," Logan said urgently. "I love you. I love your brilliant mind, your generous heart, your incredible courage. I love the way you see solutions where others see problems. I love how you make me want to be a better man." "Logan, stop," Viola's voice broke. "You don't understand. Too much has changed. There are things you don't know." "Then tell me," Logan interrupted, reaching for her hands. "Whatever it is, we can face it together." Viola looked down at their joined hands, at the way his calloused fingers intertwined with hers like they belonged together. She thought about the positive pregnancy test hidden in her purse, about the tiny life growing inside her that would connect them forever, whether they were together or not. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. Logan went completely still. "What?" "I'm pregnant," Viola repeated, looking up to meet his eyes. "From that night we spent together. I found out this morning." For a moment, Logan's face was completely blank with shock. Then, slowly, wonder spread across his features like sunrise breaking over the horizon. "You're carrying my child?" he asked, his voice hushed with awe. Viola nodded, tears finally spilling over. "I know this complicates everything. I know your mother will never accept." Logan silenced her with a kiss that was desperate and reverent and full of so much love it took her breath away. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers with tears streaming down his face. "Marry me," he whispered. "Logan, marry me," he repeated, dropping to one knee right there in Eddie's living room. "Not because you're pregnant, but because I can't imagine spending another day without you. Because you're my partner, my equal, my everything. because I want to build a life with you that's worthy of our love." Logan pulled a ring box from his jacket pocket, not the massive diamond Regina had picked out for Iris, but a beautiful emerald surrounded by diamonds that caught the light like hope itself. "This was my grandmother's ring," Logan said, his voice thick with emotion. "She left it to me with instructions that it should go to the woman who captures my heart completely. Viola Cross, brilliant engineer, brave woman, mother of my child. Will you marry me?" Viola looked down at the man kneeling before her, offering his heart and his future and his name. She thought about all the reasons it would be complicated, all the battles they'd have to fight, all the ways the world would try to tear them apart. Then she thought about the tiny life growing inside her, about the love she saw in Logan's eyes, about the possibility of building something beautiful together. "Yes," she whispered, "yes, I'll marry you." Logan slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood to kiss her with reverent intensity. In that moment, surrounded by Eddie's furniture and architectural drawings and the promise of their future, Viola Cross felt completely seen, completely chosen, completely loved. What do you think was the real turning point in Logan and Viola's love story? Was it when he saved her from the scaffolding accident, when they were trapped together during the storm, when he encouraged her to reveal her true identity, or when she decided to trust him with the news about their baby? These moments of choice, choosing courage over fear, truth over safety, love over convenience, they're what make a relationship worth fighting for. Share your thoughts in the comments below about which moment moved you the most, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about love that conquers all obstacles. 6 months later, Viola Cross Blackwell stood in the executive conference room of Cross Blackwell Engineering, her hand resting on her rounded belly as she reviewed the blueprints for their revolutionary earthquake-resistant foundation system. The patents were finally hers again after a legal battle that exposed Montgomery Industries' theft and resulted in substantial financial penalties that funded their new company. Logan entered with 2 cups of herbal tea, caffeine-free for the baby, and kissed her temple as he set her cup beside the architectural drawings. "How are my girls feeling today?" he asked, his hand joining hers on their growing child. "Like we're about to change the world," Viola responded with a smile that lit up her entire face. Their wedding had been small and intimate, held in the construction site where they first kissed, surrounded by workers who had become family and friends who had supported their love story from the beginning. Regina was notably absent, having moved to Florida after Logan bought out her shares in the company. But Eddie walked Viola down the aisle, while her best friend, Gracie, served as maid of honor and official keeper of tissues for everyone's happy tears. Logan's vows had brought tears to every eye present. "Viola, you taught me that love isn't about finding someone who fits into your world. It's about building a new world together. You showed me that the most precious things in life are often hidden, waiting for someone with the courage to truly see. I promise to spend every day proving that you are seen, valued, and loved beyond measure." Viola's response had been equally moving. "Logan, you taught me that being invisible isn't the same as being safe. You showed me that the right person won't diminish my light. They'll help it shine brighter. I promise to spend every day building something beautiful with you, combining our strengths to create something neither of us could achieve alone." Now, as they prepared to welcome their daughter, Emma Grace, they decided to name her. Logan and Viola had built something extraordinary together, a marriage based on equality and respect, a business that valued innovation and integrity, a family rooted in love rather than obligation. The construction industry had taken notice of their revolutionary designs, and orders were pouring in from around the world. But more importantly, they'd created a company culture that valued authenticity over appearances, innovation over tradition, and love over profit. "Any word from your father?" Logan asked gently, knowing the question was still complicated for Viola. Marcus Cross had reached out after learning about the pregnancy through Eddie, claiming he wanted to be part of his grandchild's life. Viola was still deciding whether to give him that chance, but she no longer felt the desperate need for his approval that had driven her younger years. "He called yesterday," Viola said thoughtfully. "Wanted to congratulate us on the company launch. I think maybe people can change. Maybe it's worth finding out." Logan squeezed her hand supportively. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Emma's going to be surrounded by so much love, she'll never doubt her worth. Looking around their shared office, a space designed for collaboration rather than hierarchy, where her structural innovations were displayed alongside Logan's project management achievements. Viola felt the deep contentment of someone who had finally found her place in the world. Their love story had begun with invisibility and fear, with stolen patents and hidden identities. But it had evolved into something powerful and transformative, a partnership that made both of them better, stronger, more authentic versions of themselves. As baby Emma kicked against her palm, Viola imagined the future they were building together. A daughter who would grow up knowing her worth, surrounded by parents who chose love over convenience, truth over safety, courage over fear. A little girl who would never have to hide her brilliance or apologize for taking up space in the world. Logan's arms encircled her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder as they looked out at the Manhattan skyline together. "No regrets?" he asked softly. Viola leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. "Only that it took us so long to find each other." "We found each other exactly when we were supposed to," Logan replied, his hands covering hers on their baby. "Everything that happened before was just preparing us for this moment." Looking back on their journey from that overhead conversation in a corporate break room to this moment of perfect contentment, Viola understood that the most beautiful love stories aren't about perfection. They're about two people choosing each other again and again, building something worthy of their combined strength and having the courage to fight for love even when the odds seem impossible. In the distance, construction cranes dotted the skyline like metallic flowers reaching toward the sky, each one built on foundations designed by Viola's brilliant mind and managed by Logan's steady leadership. They were literally changing the landscape of the city, one revolutionary building at a time. But more than that, they were proof that love could triumph over adversity, that authenticity was worth fighting for, and that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simple act of seeing someone who's been invisible for far too long. As the afternoon sun painted their office in golden light, as their baby girl moved restlessly inside Viola's womb, eager to meet the world, as Logan's arms held them both in perfect security, Viola Cross Blackwell finally understood what it meant to be truly, completely, forever visible in all the ways that mattered most. The little girl who had once felt abandoned and unworthy had grown into a woman who knew her value. The brilliant engineer who had hidden her light was now illuminating the world with her innovations. The invisible woman had become the most seen, loved, and cherished person in her husband's universe. And in 9 weeks, when Emma Grace Blackwell made her entrance into the world, she would be born into a love story that proved sometimes the most powerful foundation isn't made of steel and concrete. It's built from trust, courage, and the revolutionary act of choosing to see and be seen completely. Their happily ever after wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of something extraordinary. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story from Dear Love Diaries. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you in the next story where love conquers all.